Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call the Richmond City Council meeting for Monday, July 12th, 2021 to order. Madam Clerk, on the minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. If there can be a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 28th and receive for information the Metro Vancouver Board in Brief dated June 25th.
All right.
So moved.
So that's moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. On our CNCL 30, I see Metro Vancouver has a tree regulation toolkit to help preserve trees and increase our canopy over the Lower Mainland. Is that going to be available to everybody or members of the public? Can you or Councillor Steve throw some light on that one?
Yeah, both. That'll be available to members of the public, and also it's going to be sent out to the various jurisdictions. So we can see that when it comes through.
Put that on our website then. And the other one that was rather interesting, some of the things that I'm glad to see Metro Vancouver doing the regional ecosystem connectivity study. And they're looking across agricultural areas to try to connect on that. And I just hope that that might be available to some of our committees.
Yes, it's all public knowledge. I'm sure the staff can get a hold of that for us and circulate it.
Yeah, I think the Ag Committee and Environment Committee would be worthwhile to have that. And I'm glad to see that the board decided to write a letter to the province regarding climate action and the incentive program, CARIP program. I appreciate that very much to see that.
Yeah,
and
the letter on that was very similar to the one we wrote.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question on open air burning. Our status in Richmond and what is the status in neighboring municipalities, especially in the agricultural areas?
What is the question?
The question is the status of open air burning in agricultural areas. I believe in Richmond you have to have a permit. I stand corrected, and we don't allow any other open air burning.
Yep, I think that's the way it is. Yep, you have to have a permit. Okay.
And I'm glad to see that the Sharing Farm got $4,000 for interpretive signage. Well done. We'll get some stuff back. Thank you.
All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is
Aye.
Carried. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's one minor agenda correction. A revised set of July 5th Open General Purposes Committee minutes have been distributed to Council, and those are part of item 6.
All right, so you'll make sure that that's part of the package going forward. All right, the first item then of business is a presentation by Rebecca Clark, Manager of Museum and Heritage Services, to present the Museum and Heritage Services Year in Review 2020 video. So we'll ask for Rebecca.
Through His Worship to Council, I have nothing further to add, and I hope you enjoy the video.
All right, thank you, Rebecca.
2020 brought an interesting year of challenges and opportunities for museums and heritage sites in Richmond. In March, places closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While closed, we stayed connected to our communities and provided access to our sites through online experiences. As more was understood about the virus, we were able to reopen places with safety protocols in place to protect visitors. With the help of grant funding and our society partners, we were able to adjust programs and events to continue in new and safe ways. Some events, such as Doors Open Richmond, the Richmond Maritime Festival, Culture Days, Remembrance Day, and Songs in the Snow, had great success providing experiences online. Many programs, such as the London Heritage Farm Society's plant sale, the Richmond Museum's Young Archaeologists Summer Camp, and Winter in the Village, were able to safely continue outside. while new programming like the Richmond Museum's neighborhood walking tours and Steveston Heritage Site's Big Red Scavenger Hunt were developed to encourage people to experience Richmond's history in their own backyard. Other initiatives continued with new safety protocols, such as the Haunted Sea Halloween event at the Gulf of Georgia Cannery National Historic Site and the Heritage Commission Annual Heritage Awards. During 2020, we made the most of reduced operations to undertake much-needed planning and set us up for success in the years to come. This included working on the Steveston Heritage Site's interpretive plan, designing the new Richmond Olympic Experience exhibits, planning for the new Richmond History video series, and creating a new London Heritage Farm master plan. This planning was done with stakeholders in person when possible and through video conferencing when not. We also made the most of reduced visitor hours by taking extra efforts to care for our facilities and artifacts. This included completing the restoration of the Burnaby Wooden Boat, undertaking a number of repairs to buildings at Britannia Shipyards, and caring for our artifacts collections. Despite a challenging year, museums and heritage sites across Richmond were able to accomplish important work that connected residents with their local history and heritage and preserved important places and objects for future generations.
Well, thank you very much. Very enlightening and really shows just a few of the many programs that we have here for Museum and Heritage Services. So thanks for showing us that. With that, may I have a motion resolving the Committee of the Whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have 4 delegations who have signed up today, and they're all on item 15. So the first speaker is Mike Thorne. So, Mike, you're on mute. So if you could take yourself off mute. And if you could introduce yourself, and you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. Mr. Brody, sir. Hi, my name is Mike Thorne. I'm the president of the Richmond Rod and Gun Club. I represent hunting in Richmond through the Hunting by Permission program. Our club is founded in 1955. We've been running programs regarding hunting and that ever since. We have a long-standing history of Olympic class archers and air rifles and competitions, which we hold regularly. And as far as outside the club for hunting and other things that we do, we consider ourselves the stewards of hunting in Richmond. We have a well laid out program that right now other municipalities are looking at modeling after. After our last meeting, we are already in conference and working with the city to modify and adapt the maps so that, say, a hunter was to go out to a farmer's field, he'd have to have permission and all his permits, of course, and licenses. And then we would provide him with a map of that property where he is with the boundaries on which he is allowed to shoot within, right? That and other things we're looking at to tighten up and just to make people feel safer, right, out there, and better. Education's the key, and any questions?
No, there's no questions from anybody, so we'll thank you, Mike. Oh, Michael Wolf, Councillor Wolf.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Mike, for being here. I had another question I didn't get a chance to ask you at the committee meeting, which I think you thankfully you were at as well.
Yes.
So the other question was, I spoke to some people who live in other cities, and hunting within city limits is limited to bow and arrow shooting. You just referred to that as well. Do you know, is that the majority of what people use in the hunting by permission areas?
Within Richmond, no, that would not be the case because we're shooting waterfowl, so we'll be using shotguns, using shot, which doesn't travel as far, right? Like a bow has a further distance than a shot out of a shotgun, say, for bird shot. So in that respect, no, because odds of them using archery out there is pretty slim. It's possible, but they're not doing it, right?
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right.
Mike, the reference to archery and air guns, isn't your club the occupant of part of the premises on River Road? And isn't that where they have that kind of activity?
Yes, Councillor. We're at 7400 River Road, right beside the gymnastics. We have a venue in there. We have a Department of National Defense certified air range, which we hold tournaments and that out of, and we run 3 groups of air cadets out of. Our archery range is just awesome, thanks to the city here. It shows really well, and we have 2 elite athletes in archery. We got 2 elite shooters in our pistols, and we got guys that are on the national team in archery. We're lucky to have people like this working and promoting the sport. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mike. We'll now go to Teresa Murphy.
I'm Teresa Murphy, 9651 Finn Road, and I've lived here in this area since 1955. I think there needs to be more engagement and consultation with property owners on this issue. During hunting season, which is October to January, for many years, property owners along Finn Road, number 3, number 4, and Gilbert have been disturbed by hunters. Frequently, hunters have been seen on the 160-acre Diamond Foundation property, which runs from number 3 to number 4 behind the Richmond Country Club to Finn Road. The property manager for the 160 acres has confirmed to the RCMP that hunting is not permitted. Hunters have also been on the farm property that runs from Steeston Highway to the Dike and Shell to 4 behind the Goldie Harris house. And that property manager has confirmed that hunting is not allowed. I've looked through binoculars at dusk and seen silhouettes dressed in camouflage gear moving stealthily along the CN rail tracks, which run through the fields to Crown Packaging. CN has confirmed that hunters do not have permission to be on the rail line or the 50-foot right-of-way. My neighborhood is one of hobby farms and horse barns and gated walled mansions. Many of the places are vacant weekdays when we're at work, and illegal hunters sneak into the back fields. I'm going to address a number of concerns. The first is farming. I own a small hobby farm. The sound of gunfire disturbs our bees, which are important for crop pollination. Bees are temperamental and colony collapse is increasing. Gunfire also disturbs bats needed for insect control. Some of us have bat boxes, and all of us keep our outdoor lights to a minimum to encourage bats because we're across from the Woodward Slough, which is a mosquito breeding ground. With bats, the city doesn't have to come and spray harmful chemicals. We used to see a lot more wildlife, including coyotes, raccoons, and skunks. The volleys of repeated deafening cracks of gunfire drive wildlife from their dens along the Woodward Slough and from the fields, and we rely on this wildlife to keep the rat and mice population down. Illegal hunters come in, and they trespass, and they destroy this fragile ecosystem. My second concern is safety. I don't think the amendments to the bylaw enhance and protect the safety and well-being of Richmond. Much of the farmland in my neighborhood is farmed by tenants, and some have autumn and winter crops. Hunters shooting nearby is unsafe. On a sunny October day, there are numerous golfers on the Richmond Country Club golf course. The amendment proposes to increase liability insurance requirements to $5 million. If a surgeon or a dentist or a business owner was injured or killed, $5 million would be insufficient to cover losses. Also, in my neighborhood, we've had the SWAT team out to a mansion which had human trafficking and gambling. We've also been warned by the RCMP about another mansion which was owned by a notorious gang. These gangs fire weapons. When I hear gunfire, and I often do during hunting season, I don't know whether it's gang activity or legal hunters or illegal hunters, and I phone the RCMP, and this wastes their resources if it is legal hunters. And sometimes I just ignore the gunfire, which is not what you want anyone to do. I think this is a property rights issue, and I don't think the city has engaged in enough consultation. When a sewer line was coming down Garden City, the city notified us. When knotweed was being dealt with alongside the Woodward Slough, the city notified us. When the issue of mansions on farmland was coming up, the city notified us. We haven't had any engagement or consultation. I think you need to postpone these amendments and further engage. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Now let's see. Okay. So we'll go to the next delegation, Laura Lee Shaw.
Yes. Thank you very much. I was going to start my video, but unfortunately it says I can't. So you get a telephone symbol. I want to thank Mr. Mayor and Council for allowing me to speak. And also, I acknowledge that I'm speaking on First Nations unceded territory, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on it. I'm Laura Lee Shaw. I'm at 12331 Number 3 Road in the farmlands where the hunting is currently allowed. I have concerns with the discharge of firearms being allowed in my neighborhood. I understand the Vancouver Gun Club vets the people that apply for hunting licenses. Respectfully, I say their vetting isn't always successful at stopping inappropriate people from receiving hunting licenses for our area. Apparently, or allegedly, according to the Vancouver Gun Club representative, the fellow that was shooting into the fields off the back deck of the mansion at Steveston Highway and Number 4 Road was issued a license by the Vancouver Gun Club just the day before. So clearly their instructions to prospective hunters are not thorough enough. He did not follow the rules of distance from homes and possibly other infractions. That tied up tremendous resources from the RCMP for a day. And apparently it's awaiting charges. It suggested the hunter's insurance should be increased to $5 million, and that's not appropriate. In the event of an accident or hunter not following the rules or injuring or killing one of your family members, would a settlement of up to $5 million replace them? The area has changed over the years. 55 years ago, it was different, but now it's not wide open spaces of fields that it once was. There are streets and streets of homes filled with families and children, none of whom we want to get hurt. Several times we've called the RCMP about shots being fired outside of the regulation hunting times. We have pictures of vehicles, license plates, and hunters. Many are repeat offenders. Living in the area during hunting season is very stressful. We don't know if the shooting is a hunter, a gang hit, which Richmond is becoming famous for, or domestic violence. Frankly, it's frightening. Some of the RCMP officers who attend are sympathetic, and many have said that the area is too populated to allow hunting. We really appreciate those officers and the work they do. Unfortunately, I've been told by more than a couple of officers that if I report shots fired, I'm to stay home if I hear them and not go out and try and find the offenders. One officer, who I will never forget, was Constable Stringer. He actually told me he would not enforce the hunting allowable time curfew, at which I asked him to confirm he was in law enforcement. And if so, would he please enforce the law? He declined, and I said I would go out and find the hunters myself. Then I noticed as I was driving that he stayed in the area for over an hour driving around. Hopefully he was looking for the offenders, not just following me. But what a lapse of judgment and damaging to the RCMP reputation to have an officer say that. Rules should not be open to subjective opinions from officers or civic employees. Although the hunters are supposed to have written permission from the landowner to hunt on private property, many of our landowners do not live locally. They may not understand their liability at having people on their land with guns, and their names and signatures can be forged with the police not having the resources in time or manpower to check on each permission note. Lastly, when a business wants to do developing or filming in the area notices, everything goes to the homeowners. We're kept up to date. When they're working on the sewer, even though I don't live on Gilbert Road, where the sewer line runs down, nor do I have sewer services, I'm on septic, the city sends around notices regarding the work and changes being made. I ask that the City of Richmond do the same with important decisions such as discharge of firearm matters. My neighbors don't want the hunting in our area. I don't want hunting in our area. The barn next to my house has been hit by gunfire. I have chased injured birds in the field next to me to try and help them before they bleed to death or get attacked by a predator. And I'm fearful that the next bullet could hit someone I love, or it could hit me. Please bring the issue of hunting on our ALR land to the citywide discussion so everyone can have input. I find it interesting that it's the Vancouver Rod and Gun Club. If they're Vancouver Rod and Gun, why aren't they shooting in Vancouver? Oh, because they're not allowed to. So they come out to Richmond, and that's just not right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ma'am, I do notice that the report refers to the Richmond Rod and Gun Club. I think the Vancouver Rod and Gun Club is the one that has the range on Westminster Highway. Could be wrong, but I think that's the case. Anyway, we'll go to Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, to the delegate. That first, I'll just mention your video is on, so thanks for being here for that. And
I pulled over.
Gotcha. And I also wanted to clarify, because I think I heard you refer to Vancouver Rod and Gun Club 4 times, but I know you were at the committee meeting where there was a representative from the Richmond Rod and Gun Club who did make that statement, the one you referred to about the number 4 road and Stevenson Highway shooting. Yeah, so just to clarify that, I think that's what you referred to.
Okay.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
And I'll have further questions, but it's for staff in relation to what you said. Thanks.
All right. I've lost my list. We've got one further speaker or delegation. It's Helmut Pastrick on the same item. Helmut?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and Council. I have 2 main points to make.
Can you
and the first is
yourself?
with respect.
Please introduce yourself.
Thought I did.
Please introduce yourself. You're on mute now.
Got it. Okay, my name is Helmut Pastrick. I live at 9651 Finn Road in Richmond. And I have 2 main points to make. And the first relates to the Schedule A map. I find that map very general, and it needs to be more specific. Today's technology, GIS technology, should enable us to derive a map that reflects the 135-meter setback or requirement with respect to roads, buildings, other public places, etc. That would be very helpful. When I looked at the Richmond interactive map on the website, where I could actually lay out very crudely the 135-meter setback requirement, I found that the area south of Steveston, between Gilbert and number 3, was really a marginally viable hunting area, given the number of buildings and the roads, etc. And that's just one example. I think there potentially are others as well that really would need to be clarified and identified in particular. So a more detailed map should be possible with today's GIS technology. Would be very helpful for property owners and, of course, for hunters as well. They would know exactly their boundaries, if you will. So that I would recommend that we pursue that and come up with a much more detailed map where hunting is allowed. The second point relates to signage. I think there's a need to have hunting signs posted by the city in these areas. And the sign could read something like, "No hunting without permission of property owner," and of course in accordance with city bylaws and subject to fines. I think posting these signs at key places in the respective areas would potentially deter some illegal hunting. It wouldn't stop it, but would potentially deter. Certainly provide more information and more awareness, and that is always a good, would be very helpful. those are my two main points, and I do agree with the other delegations regarding consultation as well. I think that'd be very useful. I know the issue of, whether there's hunting bylaws should even be allowed or in place is another matter. But I think consulting with property owners is really a minimum in this respect. So those are my points, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, may I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed? That is carried. Then we go to the consent agenda. The consent agenda highlights include the receipt of committee minutes, the 2020 Richmond Film Office year in review, the municipal and regional district tax imposition bylaw, council strategic plan for the 2020 update, the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, the banking resolution update, the application by Christian and Missionary Alliance, the Canadian Pacific District for Agricultural Land Reserve Non-Farm Use at 11371 Number 3 Road, the Assembly Zone sites in the Agricultural Land Reserve, and finally the low-end market rental unit placement. May I have a motion to adopt those general consent? So that's moved.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Okay, we'll ask you to raise your hand if you want to speak to this stuff. All right, not seeing anyone, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed?
I want to speak to a couple of items. Mayor Brody, I'd like to speak to a couple of items. I'm sorry my video is not working.
All right, Councillor Day, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm experiencing serious technical difficulties tonight. I apologize. I just want to speak to a couple of items. Number 8 was the municipal and regional district tax imposition. I want to let the people know about this, that this is actually a 3% tax on hotel rooms. And so this is not a citizen tax. And I was pleased to see that 23 out of 26 hotels endorse this tax. And of course, that money goes towards tourism. So I think that's a really smart tax that helps to bring people into Richmond. And of course, that brings revenue to businesses and whatnot. I wanted to speak to number 12, which is the Christian Missionary Alliance School, which is the one at number 3 and Stevenson Highway, basically. This school has been operating for decades, and the school was built the same year, or the building was built the same year as the ALR was formed. So this is a more than reasonable exemption for a school that has been in operation for a very, very long time. And I'm afraid this one fell through the cracks, which is unfortunately the problem we've had with the ALC. And I know that staff are now working with them really closely to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen again. And then number 14 is a low-end market rental unit replacement. We have the ability to cluster low-end market rental units, but we were worried about that at previous council meetings because did that signify those people in any way? Well, we got staff to do an amazing survey. Would have preferred more respondents, but nonetheless, it came back that people in clustered units felt the same amount of comfort level as individual units. So I'm pleased that we've looked into that and make sure that people who are living in these low-end market units are comfortable. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. All right, that brings us to the items that have been taken off the consent agenda. The first one is the one we've heard from delegations on, the amendments to the regulation of the discharge of firearms bylaw. And we'll go to Councillor Steeves, who is chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Committee, to introduce it. Harold? Harold, you're on mute. Harold, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm on now.
You're good.
And have I got my picture? Okay. Okay. Which one are we on here? I can't find it.
Number 15, Harold.
15. Oh yeah, here he is. Yeah. that the regulation that regulating the discharge of firearms bylaw number 4183, amendment bylaw number 10278 be amended. Amend the terms of the bylaw as described in the staff report. Amendment to regulating the discharge of firearms bylaw 41383, June 2nd, 2021. That it be introduced and given first, second, and third reading, and I so move.
Moved and seconded. So did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I will make a brief comment on it. Actually, I'm very biased on this particular bylaw, and I mentioned this in committee. Our farm operation is dying because of the birds that have been consuming our pasture. We had 30 head of cattle about 2 or 3 years ago. The widgeon ducks and the geese have simply destroyed our upland fields. We have converted the fields to growing Saskatoons, and we got rid of our cows, all but 5 of them. We had about 30 there until 2 years ago. This year we've opened up, now the Saskatoons are old enough that we're opening them up for pick your own Saskatoons. Whether they sell or not, I don't know. But that's what faces farmers that have pastures and they're trying to raise livestock with the literally tens of thousands of ducks and geese that now come into our fields day and night time. So I'm very, very strongly in support of this, of the hunting bylaw. But I'd say I'm maybe biased, but that's what I feel. So I'm very much in support of this recommendation.
All right, thank you. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll support this because I think we have to separate hunting from protecting farmland and farming and letting farmers do it. But I have some questions, Your Worship, and I maybe think we should be given direction to staff on it, because I think hunting is a privilege, just like any other activity in Richmond. And hearing from the delegations, I think it's important that we look after their welfare as well. And I know Mike Thorne very well as president of the Rod and Gun Club, and I know he does a good job with his executive, etc. But I do want to put this out. I think the permit process needs to be evaluated, and I say that to Mr. Thorne. I can't believe somebody can come in a night before with a translator and know all the rules of Canada and hunting and get a permit within 24 hours and start shooting. I just find that absolutely appalling. I couldn't do it, and I think that needs to be addressed. That's, in my opinion, not acceptable. I really feel that if you're going hunting, you should get your permit a week ahead of time and let people know where you're going, etc. And I really feel that that's it. And I have a big question with regard to visitors who don't know the terrain, don't know the areas, etc. Sportsmen and women, when they go to a comp, and checks out their venue before they go there, so they know where they go for the competition. Not saying hunting is a competition. However, if you're walking down a railroad track and you don't know where you're going, and you've been there for the first time, map or no map, I feel, Your Worship, that kind of referral needs to be referred back to the gun club to come up with some procedures and process that we all know and other people know. Again, how do I get a permit? I come from wherever I come. I come from Alberta. I heard you could hunt, okay, or I can go shooting in some cases. Do I just phone up somebody and get a permit? I think there's a process. So I put that out there. And the other thing, very much so, Your Worship, I think signage will go a long ways to rectify certain situations. And if certain property owners don't want hunting in their backyard, let's respect their point of view, and let's make sure there's signage around that so that people will not come and disturb them. And I think that's a small amount given our outstanding sign department at the workyard. We can come up with probably a couple dozen signs quite nicely that were put in a proper color so that people see them and hunters see them and they know when they can honor them. And I think there should be a process where people are not honoring rules. That should be sent back to the gun club, because it should be their members that are doing it. And that's why we have the gun club. And that's why we're having this bylaw. So I think some people have a little bit of homework to do. We are going to go to public hearing. I think this kind of thing can be done before the public hearing, and we can see how it goes from there. I will support it to put it on the floor, because I appreciate and respect the hunters as well, and I hear Harold's comment, and I think we should be able to discharge. Remember, we removed hunting, at least Harold and Malcolm. We removed all the hunting off of Sturgeon Banks and off of Gary Point and out in the Chuck there. So maybe it's time that we investigated that back so that farming can continue to be productive. So those are my comments, Your Worship. I hope the clerk has got those down, and I'd like to make those as referrals to staff to sit down with the president of the Rod and Gun Club and the executive and come up with some tightening of procedures.
Just before I go to Councillor Hobbs as the next speaker, I just want to have a couple questions to clarify. Does this go to public hearing? The next step is final adoption, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my mistake, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay, yes, Madam Clerk is also saying the same thing. The second thing is, until we amend these bylaws, do the old bylaws apply? So, in other words, if this was delayed, would we still have the old set of bylaws that would be in force? Can someone answer that for me? Carly? Ms. Williams?
Yeah. Yeah, through Your Worship, what's before council today is a bylaw amendment. So we do still have the bylaw in place, the current bylaw. It's just the amendments that are new.
All right, so I just wanted to mention that because if there's any suggestion of a delay, we still have the rules. It's just a matter of if and when we amend them. Councillor Hobbs. Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, this is an interesting topic because hunting and firearms are like some of the other hot topic issues in our country, in our province, and urban areas and rural. And it always evokes strong opinions and some strong emotions, justifiably so, because it's important to people. And education of hunters and education of the public and communication, some signage, some improvement in training, improvement in maps, especially in a place like Richmond, can all be part of a continual process to improve the situation. And I don't oppose those. I think those are all reasonable ideas. Some of the concerns expressed about the sounds of gunfire, I've heard those concerns expressed by other people as well. Sometimes it's just they don't know what's going on and they wonder what it is and what those sounds are. But with this firearms bylaw, I appreciate the report and I appreciate the response back from some of the other conversations that staff have given. And I think the update in insurance is reasonable and fairly standard to $5 million. You have to keep in mind that prosecution for firearms offenses under the BC Offence Act can go up to $50,000, which is quite a substantial amount of money. I think we should also keep in mind that the number of people who hunt in Richmond especially, but probably overall, is a relatively small minority of people. So it's a very small number. In absolute numbers, it's a tiny number that hunt in Richmond, and overall, as a percentage of the population, it's probably even smaller. So it's easy to believe that just based on numbers, hunting isn't something that we need in Richmond anymore. But if you delve into it a little bit and you talk to the people who do hunt or who hunt on land with permission, and if you talk to farmers who have large tracts of farmland, not all of them, but many of them will explain exactly why hunting is necessary for them to grow their crops, manage their land. So they will actually tell you, as Councillor Steves has alluded to, that without hunting, without the ability to hunt at all in certain seasons, their crops can be quite adversely affected. So it's important to realize that if we're going to support farmers, and many of us in our community talk about the importance of farmland and the ALR, and I think we all believe in that, then we have to think of policies that can help farmers as well, or that do help farmers. Hunting is one of those policies. It's not that we can't have more education and some of the things I've mentioned tonight. We can have that. But this bylaw recommendation is fairly straightforward in what it is attempting to do. And I've already mentioned the two things. So I will be supporting the staff recommendation regarding this bylaw. The Richmond Rod and Gun Club is a responsible community member and has been for many years, and they are a community stakeholder as well. If there's improvements to be made in their processes, I'm all for that. But this is an important tool for farmers. And although it is a small minority of people in Richmond that actually hunt, it is an important aspect to farm life. So I will be supporting it. Thank you very much.
All right. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I got a number of questions here that have come up from the delegation, a number of delegations we had today, and also some of my consultation with friends and family who have bigger gun cabinets than I do have closet space. I'll just to start out with, we received a really wonderful memo from staff that came in July 12th, and I'm quite certain all of the delegates, or maybe Mike knew about it, but the other 3 delegates probably were not aware of it. I didn't go over it at the time because I believe they're still in the meeting able to hear this now. So my question to staff first is, the items listed on the memo that I'll just briefly summarize for us. It is about the area in question of hunting by permission, and that the Richmond Rod and Gun Club will work with the property owners to help to make better maps in the future that maybe will be updated annually to see whose properties are in or not. The second item is around signage going on the roads that go around the 2 areas, East Richmond and south of Easton Highway. Third one is that if any landowner wants no hunting signs, they will be provided and by the city, and they can put them up at their properties. And then the fourth item on that memo was that letters will be sent to each property owner in the 2 hunting zones outlined. So my question to staff, are those 4 recommendations that are in this memo, are they solidified with the item that we're discussing right now, or are they separate and they'll go ahead anyway, no matter what happens tonight?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we can move forward on all of these items. It will make a difference as it relates to the bylaw and the fines and the final wording on the signage. That would be the only change.
Great. I really appreciate the quick turnaround since that Parks and Rec meeting, and to be able to have that conversation with Rod and Gun Club members to get that verified. That was really terrific. The second question I have, this is in our report before us tonight. On our page 204, the Richmond Rod and Gun Club did a really good job of summarizing their telephone survey. And my question really boils down to one of the points there where they asked and found out the number of farms that pass holders hunted within these 2 zones the past year. And if you get the results, it says 13 pass holders hunted on 1 farm and 3 pass holders hunted on 2 or 4 different farms. Do we know if that 1 farm was the same as one of the 2 to 4 farms? And if so, then that really simplifies the map, that there's only 4 parcels, so we don't need to really focus on the 850 anymore. That is very cumbersome to deal with. we could just make a map for this year that shows the 4 to 5 farms that were used last year. Could that be a simple starting place?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yeah, the intention will be to work with the Richmond Rod and Gun Club and all of the individuals that are going to take part in the program, and we'll zero in on the exact property with the dimensions. And again, hopefully that will it'll be straightforward and relatively simple to complete the task, and also clarify what they're allowed to do and not do.
Great, thanks. And I think your worship to staff, I think my final question then on this point will be around the terminology of open area. That came up at in committee around, I think, a conflicted use of that term. So the city of Richmond, I believe, refers to open area as the area south of the Fraser River, which includes Kirkland, Gunn, Woodward, Duck, Barber, and Williamson Islands. And then I heard from a delegate in committee that the open area term is actually a provincial term, and that's what hunters refer to again, what we're calling the hunt by permission. Many people who want to discharge firearms consider those areas open areas because that's what the province calls it. Can that be clarified by staff?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I will have to follow up with the provincial government and the biologists that we work with to get some clarification, and we can send that out to Mayor and Council.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just have a few comments, if I may, then, Your Worship, on this item. So I have to say that I'm really in support of many things that have come to this point today. I'm in support of the amendments that we're looking at making to the existing bylaw. I'm in support of all the things that are on the staff memo that we received. In support of the continuation of the Richmond Rod and Gun Club in the role that they play. However, saying all that, I still feel that there's a difference between being a resident and feeling safe and giving access for recreation and food harvesting of animals that are hunted. And as a result, I know that the conclusion in our report here is saying that this is going to make things safer, but I don't think we're there yet, and I have a really tough time approving something that we hear from people who are fearful, who have clear evidence that's on an ongoing basis, and I don't think we're doing what's fully necessary just yet, but we're on the track. And one of the things I wanted to, I think, helps me solidify how we'll get there is we're going to be sending out these letters to 850 parcels in the two zones, and to be able to hunt on those parcels, people will need a letter, in a handwritten or hand-signed letter that they can go. So it's not that you can just go in any of the hunting permission area. You actually have to contact and get a signed letter from them. So until we're there, I'd be willing for us to put a hold on hunting by permission areas for a year, to have people help to utilize the open area south of the Fraser, and to help get all these great initiatives that the city and the Richmond Rod and Gun Club are working to partner on, and make Richmond safer when it comes to firearm discharge. So we're on the track there, but it's not all encompassing in this report today. So I don't think everyone in Richmond, as we've heard, supports it. So I'm going to provide the opposition at this point till we can make it a safer all-around program. So thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship, I would support the motion on table, and because I think these are important changes. I think we need those changes to improve the situation. Having said that, I think we cannot just stop here because for example, right, the increase of insurance coverage is not going to really address some of the concerns being raised by the residents, like safety. I think this is not going to address it. It may be, after the fact, okay, when something happened, there's a better coverage of insurance. But we want to prevent things from happening. So I think I agree with some comments already being made. We have to go further into taking an overall reassessment of the situation and see what kind of changes we have to make in terms of policy or procedures. For example, it's already mentioned signage. I think we can improve on that. And the idea that perhaps some farmers or local people, they can put up a sign saying that no hunting here, right? I mean, they should have the choice of putting up a sign saying that for their property. So perhaps, those are the things that we need to explore further. And also, I think there are two pieces of the issue. One is education, and the other is enforcement. Now, I noticed that in the report, staff mentioned that there were 28 calls to the RCMP in the last 3 years, and none so far has been brought to charging in court. Now, I don't know, what are the details of those cases, and why was none of them being charged? Was it because, when the RCMP arrived, the person's gone, or, there's no substantial evidence. So I think there's an enforcement piece that I think that we have to look further into. And for education, signage might be one thing. On the other hand, I don't know if we ever think about limiting hunting to Richmond residents only, or only to members of the Richmond Gun Club. Somebody as I mentioned, hunting is not a right? It's a privilege. And perhaps, we should not be open Richmond for hunters all over. And I believe that very often those people who violate the regulations were not members of the Richmond Gun Club, because they live here, they know the situation, they follow the rules. But just assume that somebody coming from elsewhere and not familiar with the regulations, and they don't know the rules in Richmond, and they may violate the regulations. So I think there are issues such as signage, enforcement, and perhaps some limitation of who has the privilege to hunt in Richmond. I think those are the issues that I would like staff to explore further and come up with other recommendations. But as the motion stands right now here on table, I would support it.
Thank you. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the motions on the floor, but I do agree with some of the comments of my colleagues that perhaps we could be doing a little bit more. I do have a question to you, Your Worship, to staff, and thank you to staff for being so proactive and getting us the memo that outlines some of the steps going forward. In regards to the letter that's going to go out to each property owner, I'm wondering if there could be a comment section added so that they could give feedback over the course of the next hunting season. And is there going to be a section on, what to do? I know it seems obvious, call the police if you see someone on your property or if you hear shots fired. But, perhaps for immigrants or new Canadians, what to do if they see someone on their property or hear gunshots, who to call. Maybe a contact number at the Richmond Rod and Gun Club. And I think it would be really good if we get a report back after the upcoming hunting season and, see what some of the comments from the letters have been and, maybe get some data on the number of shots fired, calls for service, just so we can see how things are going. And I would agree that, education and enforcement are key. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to have some kind of a community-wide general education program that when, in advance of hunting season, that maybe goes out in the newspaper or on social media, this is going to happen, those kinds of things. So that, I've talked to people who've heard, shots and they've come from Delta. And, you know, they're wondering what's going on. So I can see how it would be, you know, it's not a good feeling to hear that, and you do get worried. So I think the bylaw amendment before us is good. It moves us forward, and I think that if we have a little bit more information from the community, perhaps we could, you know, look at something next year. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. I will also support the bylaw amendments that we have in front of us. But once we get through that, I want to talk about a referral to staff to it's been mentioned by a number of people. We really need to go farther. You know, this has been around since 1983, and Richmond Rod and Gun Club's done a good job, but it's time to look at a number of aspects that have been mentioned by various people to see how we can improve and fine-tune the situation. So I'm going to call the question.
Carol Day, I'd like to speak to this issue.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Sorry, I'm experiencing huge technical problems tonight. I had a question of staff. If we approve this tonight with the changes from 500,000 to or 5 million to 10 million, and all the $1,000 to $50,000 fines, and can we also, between now and public hearing, make the recommendations or the direction to staff to make changes with regards to signage and education and whatnot?
There will be no public hearing. That has been established. And it'll just go for final adoption in the near future. And secondly, the process would take much longer than just a week or two.
Okay, I would also agree with referring it back, and the items I would like to direct staff to do is that, well, first of all, I think we have to recognize the amazing job that the Rod and Gun Club have done with the PAL course and the core course and the registering the 22 passes that were issued to bona fide, you know, respecting hunters. But clearly there's people out there that are not obeying the 135-meter mark away from occupied areas. So I would like staff to create, you know, 100 signs that can be put every 50 meters along those populated areas to clearly mark where the borderline is, where you absolutely cannot hunt. And then I'd also like to direct staff to critique the map, because the map is clearly not detailed enough. If you look at it, it looks like a big square. And, you know, I've been down that area, and there's plenty of roads on Finn Road and Fore Road and Garden City Road, but there is people living. And so the map needs to critique area and reflect the actual setback. I think it'll be much clearer to those people who are breaking the rules. And I'd also like to absolutely do an education exercise where we advertise in the local paper what are the rules so there can be no confusion. So before it goes to public hearing, those are the issues that I'm most interested in dealing with, because I think that, you know, the Rod and Gun Club is doing the best they can with, you know, the power that they have, but we need staff working with them to make this a really good education piece to people who just don't seem to get it.
Councillor Day, there will be no public hearing. Secondly, are you making a motion to refer this back?
Yes, Mayor Brody, I am.
All right. Is that seconded? It's seconded. I'm calling the question on the referral back. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's Councillor Day, Councillor Wolf in favor. All those opposed? All other councillors are opposed. That is defeated. I just repeat, is if we can vote on what we've got in front of us, I'll be making a referral motion to carry on the process in greater depth. So I'm going to call the question on the motion that's in front of us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It's carry with Councillor Wolf opposed. Now, I think to distill, I've been making notes of what everybody's been saying. And first of all, I want to say, I think the Richmond Rod and Gun Club has done really a good job of a rather administrative process, but the time has come after, what, 30 or 40 years that we take a long look at this and just kind of really tighten it up. Secondly, the other delegations I thought spoke really well. Really, the central point to my thinking was how, you know, the pass holders have been consulted in all this, the users, but really the public, the landowners, really haven't been consulted in a very meaningful way. So my suggestion is that we would have a referral motion that, which would be independent of the changes to the bylaw which we have voted on, directing staff to conduct more consultation with farm owners and other stakeholders regarding the hunting by permission program, including the appropriate rules, the appropriate areas and properties, with a more detailed map, if possible, enforcement strategies, the issue of the timing for the permit issuance, that's to address the idea that you get it one night and you're hunting the next day, and general education of the public and stakeholders. Yes, and finally, consideration of more effective signage in conjunction with the program. So that would be my suggestion on a referral.
Second.
Does anyone, Councillor Luke?
Thank you, Chair. So question more to you, is the Richmond Rod and Gun Club considered one of the stakeholders as part of this process?
Oh, yes, I think the Richmond Rod and Gun Club is a key stakeholder because, you know, they have a lot of knowledge about it. They've obviously been very, very responsible as best they can in the program, but they have their point of view from a particular point of view, and so get some fuller type of input is what I'm thinking.
You know, I think too, though, that if people who are long-term members are typical of your 22 pass holders in a year, and they're used to being able to get their license the next day to go and shoot primarily on their own property in many cases, it will be good for them to understand that if that's going to change to 1 week or some other number, that makes sense to them too.
Okay, Councillor Steves.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the part of the recommendations to deal with gets a license and goes hunting after 1 day. In this case, I believe it was an owner, and an owner is I believe would be exempt from anything else because owners are permitted under the BC Provincial Act to go hunting on their own property. So I don't think that person required any courses and training simply because if he owned the land. So I think it's not right to blame the Rod and Gun Club for issuing it. I think they would have to issue it, but maybe that can be thrown out. Obviously, the owner didn't know very much about what he was doing, but if he owned the land, then I think he's got a right to do it.
Fair enough. I think the inquiry on the situation would take that into account. We would get that information. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. I think that's a very prudent and appropriate referral, and I support it. The one group I wasn't sure when you read it out, though, that, and I'm not sure how you'd identify them, would be actual farmers who farm large tracts, who actually are some of the people that have expressed their need to actually hunt on their land. And they might not be members of the Richmond Rod and Gun Club, as Councillor Steves just alluded to. So they may require some individual reaching out because they might not be a part of an association or group or even the Agricultural and Food Security Committee. And I think they are probably one of the more important stakeholders. Thank you.
Fair enough. I did specify farm owners, but there's
Sorry.
Well, at least I think I did. But in any case, it can be a wider group.
Thanks.
Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship. How about the point I raised? Hunting in Richmond for Richmond residents only. I would like to have staff comment on this one.
Could we have staff comment on that? I think that would be a tough one to enforce, but if Mr. Wheeler or Ms. Ayers or Ms. Williams wants to comment on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, we would have to look at it and discuss that with Paul and get back to you.
Okay, why don't we just add that? Any residency restrictions, put it that way. Okay, well, and I don't know whether that's going to fly or not, but we can at least look at it, or even whether we want it to fly.
Carol, did you hear?
Is that Councillor Day?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Once again, sorry for this technology glitch tonight. This reminds me of when we had a problem with people finding remote control airplanes in the school fields, and it was a huge issue. And what we did was we brought together the legitimate RC flyers with the people who just plain didn't know they were doing anything wrong. And in the end, we ended up with a really good system where people had to register with the flying club in order to fly in one particular field, and in the end, everybody was happy. So I think that this referral is going to handle all of the issues by dealing with the owners, dealing with the residents, dealing with the farmers who are maybe leaseholders, and dealing with those uneducated people that don't understand or don't care that they're doing something wrong. And by doing it this way and putting up tons of signs, I think we're going to alleviate this problem through education, cooperation, and just plain patience. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thanks, Your Worship. If you could just clarify in your referral, what was it about the map? In our memo on the second last paragraph, it outlined details between the staff and Richmond Rod and Gun Club's conversation on this new map regime that's going to come forward. Would that be a potential in this referral to have the first generation of that for this fall's hunting season?
Staff can take that under advisement. I think it's a fine point that because hunting season is going to be here soon, if you can clarify some of this stuff before the hunting season, so much the better.
Great, thank you.
But there's, as you know, there's limitations on how much detail can be given on the maps. That is a general restriction. All right, so on the referral, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. That brings us back to the agenda. To the General Purposes Committee. Number 16 is the emergency response equipment and the fireboat options. I'm going to say it first, then you can move it. That the land-based option of high-flow industrial pump with a source of funds of $800,000 of additional capital cost to come from the jet fuel agreement be approved, and that staff continue to have additional discussions for a regional solution for fire protection on the water and examine if the industrial pump can be placed on a barge. And I would so move. So that's moved and seconded. Let me just go to that item. When we were kind of forced to approve the jet fuel access, fuel line access agreements, there was a sum of money, and that's what we're talking about. We're looking at the possibility of fire suppression as it affects the new infrastructure and the vessels that are going to be plying the Fraser River. Staff has summarized what we could do. We could either just leave status quo with nothing, or a land-based option. In the next capital purchase for the Richmond Fire Rescue, they would have a more elaborate and sophisticated piece of apparatus that we could use for fire suppression should some disaster strike. And that would cost an extra $800,000 and then additional operating budget impact. Now, there are two more options, a medium fireboat option, which would cost $2.2 million in capital cost and $250,000 for operating budget, or a large fireboat, which would be $10 to $25 million in the operating budget impact. I believe that this motion talks about the approval of the high-flow industrial pump. It provides the extra money that we're going to need to obtain it, and I think that that is the secret to the thing. We said that we want staff to continue talking with regional partners on a regional solution if that's possible. And also, it was Councillor Steves, I believe, who made a good point that if possible, wouldn't it be great if you could take that industrial pumper and put it on a barge and then take it to any kind of a water-based fire? So I think that this is appropriate, and we'll look for other comments and questions. Councillor Hobbs. I've got Councillor Hobbs, Councillor Wolf, and then Councillor Day.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yeah, I think what you just outlined and the recommendation is reasonable, given all the circumstances. There's a couple memos that arrived today, which I think make a number of good points. One by Mr. Langer, one by Councillor Day, and I don't think what we do here tonight will necessarily, and Ms. Lerner, I don't think anything we do tonight is going to preclude us from following up on those points either. But in terms of this situation, I mean, always preparing for very high risk but low frequency events is difficult, if not impossible, to fully prepare for. So it's a matter of being best prepared. And I think the high velocity or high volume pumper truck is a reasonable option to take, because it will allow, I believe, fire rescue services, and I will ask this question, to effectively or more effectively combat a lot of the types of fires we're talking about, because a lot of them are still somewhat land-based. So I'm supportive of it for the high flow pumper for that reason. So if I could just ask a question about the fireboat consortium as well. I mean, the report that I read was, I think, from 2010. So I did wonder if the original 5 boats, which all seem to be posted on or stationed on the kind of north side of Vancouver and the Burrard Inlet area, are there still 5 boats in that consortium?
Deputy Chief.
Thank you. Through His Worship to Councillor Hobbs, I believe there's 2 dedicated fireboats operated by the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services, and other boats that may have firefighting equipment that belong to the consortium. I'm actually not aware of, but I can certainly check on and get back to you on the total number.
Or just a couple other questions, if that's okay. So the current state of affairs might be a little bit different than the report, and perhaps not as good as it was when the report was written. But New West does seem like a logical location if there were to be a boat on the south arm, or a Fraser giving it access to both arms a little bit more quickly. But the recommendations that were in that report, for instance, for the regional plan and having one lead agency, I take it from previous conversations, the progress on those recommendations or recommendations like those has stalled? Has it stalled?
Through His Worship to Councillor Hobbs, those discussions are ongoing, and actually myself and the fire chief have a meeting with the Greater Vancouver Fire Chiefs and the Port of Vancouver, I believe at the end of this month, exploring more of those options. So those discussions have not stalled.
Okay, so just one other comment then. Fireboats are, a very expensive option, and I think a couple members of the public have weighed in on this as well. The economies of scale do kick in, like the multi-million-dollar boat to fight fires on the river or on the ocean, for instance, seems a little bit cost prohibitive for one city. So I hope those conversations bear some fruit, and I hope that the airport is part of that, as some other stakeholders on the river that have some risky operations. So good luck with that. But on the actual issue of the high flow pumper truck, I will be supporting it, because my last question is, out of the fires that we've had along the river, whether or not they're to do with fuel or anything else, but they could be just a pier, approximately in your experience, what percentage of fires have been essentially land-based and able to be accessed, if not entirely, or fought, if not entirely, at least substantially by land assets?
Thank you. Through his worship to Councillor Hobbs, in my experience, the number or the percentage of fires that have been accessible from the land has been higher than 95%.
Well, thank you for that, and that is a very big reason for me supporting the acquisition of this new pumper truck in the process of normal acquisitions. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few additional points I'd like to make. I have a feeling Councillor Day after me is going to make a referral, but so I'll leave some points out. But I just want to highlight, like we did in our report here in our package on page 226, gives us the table that shows the four options, and we're looking at the land-based option. And one of the reasons I was opposed to this in committee, and will be again tonight, is I'd like to see more options for land-based options. I also feel that there needs to be a river option as well. So to commit some of this limited amount of funding, which I remember voting against because it wasn't going to be enough, we shouldn't be whittling away at putting some of it into for mostly other uses away from the jet fuel terminal. I think there will be other sources of funding that we can use for fire equipment when the capital budget for that comes up. Whereas right now, I think the real priority is around getting the fireboats solution figured out in very short order, as there's multiple projects underway. And looking at the map in that 100-page memo that we got of those two reports that Fire Chief Tim Wilkinson provided us, and looking at all the maps in there and where all of the vessels are right now are not in and around Richmond. And when they came to deal with that new Westminster Pier fire, they were out of fuel by the time they got there. So we really need that solution. And I did hear when we were talking to, or when Chief Wilkinson was in committee, about the fact that the conversations did somewhat come to just being Richmond, Vancouver, and the port, and all of the other groups are kind of putting it on hold. I read through some of the minutes of some of our neighboring municipalities because their staff were recommending fireboat idea options as well, and they put them off till late next year, the few that I read into at least. So I think that's where this limited amount of funding, the $10 million pot that we got for fireboat or for emergency cleanup, I think we need it to be for that as opposed to that. So I have two questions, if I may, through your worship. One is, do we have like a rough estimate? Do we get a certain lump sum of property taxes from the port each year that we can fit back into this $10 million account and help it grow? Do we get any property taxes that we can specifically put into this from the Port of Vancouver?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, we do get payments in lieu of taxes from the port. However, they offset then the property tax increase annually. So if you were to set aside amounts into the reserve, then you'd have to, it would be a tax impact.
Right. Okay. Do you have just are you able to give a ballpark figure for annual amounts, or is that not doable right now?
I don't have the amount on hand right now.
Yep. No worries. My second question relates to if staff are aware of the potential for the jet fuel project to actually be completely unlike we were told or sold on years ago. So are staff aware that they're actually requesting a larger truck transfer station for jet fuel? And if so, then I think the fire department should really know what scale they're planning to build there, so that we also have used some of our funding for the jet fuel risk that will maybe need to be mitigated on Sea Island at the jet fuel terminal that's there, as they want to expand trucking. And we were told they were going to need less trucking because of this pipeline. So what is it? Do staff know about it? And yeah.
Through his worship to Councillor Wolf, thank you very much. I'll certainly look into what the options are going to be, and if this is new information, I can report back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thank you. I support the motion to get a high-powered pumper truck, and I've seen how successful they are in these last few weeks fighting the forest fires for ranchers that have them or borrow them or get them there somehow. They can send jets of water great distance and really over tops of buildings and over tops of trees and come down and hit the fire. So I think it'll go a long ways to put out fires from the land side. And I did suggest, as the mayor suggested, of having a boat or barge of sorts that a fire truck could actually go out in the water if need be. The other thought I've had since then is that my recollection is many, many years ago that the hovercraft was supposed to have the ability to put a bumper of some sort on the hovercraft for fighting fires from the water. So I'd appreciate if somebody could check that out. Because some of these portable pumps are quite effective.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. I won't belabor the point. I just have a question of the chief. I will be supporting the recommendation on there. You know, we keep talking about everything in South Arm, et cetera, but we've got a North Arm of the river, and with a lot of boats and a lot of traffic on, and we keep forgetting about that, as well as Sea Island. So I have a question about the increased the high flow pumper. Is that capable of just fighting domestic fires if we have to?
Through his worship to Councillor McNulty, thank you. The high flow pumper is basically a higher capacity fire truck that can be moved and located somewhat like our current fire trucks do. So the fire truck can get closer to where these issues are, water side or anywhere in the property in the city, wherever we can drive a current fire truck.
So we could take it if we had to a regular fire downtown, if you wish. Is that not correct? Is what I'm getting at?
Through his worship to Councillor McNulty, that is correct. It's a drivable vehicle. There'd be people driving it and sitting on it as the other trucks.
Well, okay, that actually reinforces my thoughts for this pumper truck. Every 2 years or thereabouts, Your Worship, we trade in our and upgrade our pumper trucks. Maybe this is a feature we should be looking at a number of trucks within our community as we're doing. We're already doing upgrading our fleet, catching up on new techniques and portions on the truck. So this getting this to start with might be something that we have, and then we look to increasing them along the way, because we're doing it anyhow. And if it means we're getting a better quality vehicle, it's more diverse and capable of more things, maybe we should be looking at high flow pumper trucks for our suppression as we're doing it, whether we're putting out a fire in the nature park or we're putting out a domestic fire or whatever, or a boat that catches on fire in the North Arm. So I think we talk about boats getting from A to B. I think this might be a good way to go, and we're maybe breaking new ground here of how we're going to address fires on the water from a land-based approach. So, and what can be adapted. So, a good report, and I will be supporting the recommendation on the floor, and I would look into how we might expand our fleet and how we can continually upgrade our fleet with new technology. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Your Worship, I will support the motion. I know that we need a fireboat, and I know that we need a regional solution. However, the reality is this is not going to happen soon. And over the weekend, we received 2 reports from the fire chief, and the first one was 2010, and the second one was 2021. So it's 10 years apart. And we can see that there's no progress between the first and the second report. So we're still at the same place. So I think if we are going to hope for a regional solution, I think we have to wait much longer. So I think the land-based high-flow industrial pumper will serve some purpose and give us some protection while we are trying to work out a regional solution. I think that will give the public more protection. And I cannot imagine that we can just sit there waiting for more time for a regional solution. So I think this is the best choice for us in the meantime. And we have to continue to work for a regional solution. I think that's what we have to do. And I think this motion covers that. So I'm going to support the motion.
All right. Councillor Day.
Can you hear me, Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So since the council meeting on July 5th, we received almost 100 pages from the fire chief regarding the 2021 firefighting resource assessment study and the port fire risk assessment study. And it's pretty darn simple. All you have to do is read the report. And in the 2021 report, it clearly states that the future developments, such as the proposed LNG and the jet fuel storage facilities, are established in the Fraser River. The need for professional fire service, fire boat response becomes even more paramount. Partnerships between the Port Authority and municipal fire departments to acquire and deploy a FI2 or II classified vessel would greatly decrease the potential negative impact to both the Fraser River and the national economy. And it also states very clearly on page 16 of the report that collaboration will be a key for sustainable port operations and growth. This $800,000 whittles away at the $8.5 million that's left in the VAFFC fund. And we cannot afford to whittle away 5 cents. We must spend every single penny and every single dollar in a way that will actually protect and deal with a catastrophic and emergency. We have an 80 million liter jet fuel tank farm and a marine terminal on the Fraser River. We've got to have the right system in place. I have a question of staff. Did we or did we not get the foam suppression system that we requested on the six-story high jet fuel tanks that would have foam fatale that would actually put out fire within less than 60 seconds?
Through His Worship to Councillor Day, are you speaking of the fuel storage facilities at the south arm of the river?
Yes. Six-story tanks had requested the foam fatale system, which would have automatically dispersed foam in the event of a tank farm fire.
Thank you. Through His Worship, back to Councillor Day. My understanding is that what was requested has been provided or will be provided.
Yeah, so we didn't get it. So the thing that I'm finding is this, I understand what everyone's trying to do here. They want to make it look like we're doing something, but $800,000 on a pumper thing is just not going to do the trick. We need to start this coalition between New Westminster, Delta, Surrey, and Richmond. We need to get a fire boat that could potentially be docked in the middle in New Westminster, and that's where our money should be going. We have $8.5 million to spend. Let's not waste 5 cents of it. And for that reason, I'd like to make a motion to refer this back to staff for the staff to work with the Port of Metro Vancouver, the City of New Westminster, and the City of Surrey, the City of Delta, to develop a collaborative plan for fighting fires and spills on the Fraser River. And earlier, Councillor Wolf did ask how much are they paying in taxes, the VAF or the YVR and the Port Authority, and together they spend $16.7 million in combined taxes. I think we can push them for some more money, and it's time to do it now before an emergency happens.
All right, so you're making that motion. Is that seconded? It is seconded by Councillor Wolf. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the referral motion? So be
Aye.
Councillor Day, Councillor Wolf. All those opposed? All right, all the other councillors are opposed. It is defeated. I'm going to call the question on the motion that's on the floor, the main motion. All those in favor? Those opposed?
Nay.
Yes, it's carried with Councillors Wolf and Day opposed. Okay, so that brings us to the revised public art policy. And I'll read it out. The public art contributions, that option 1 for the allocation of voluntary developer public art contributions is described in the table of the staff report be endorsed. And secondly, that option 1 for the city and private public art contributions is described in table 3 of the staff report be endorsed, and I would so move. All right, I'll just summarize this situation, and those can speak to it if they wish. In terms of the public art program, which is a voluntary program for the city, a number of months ago, Council has straightened out some of the policy and the procedures that are involved in terms of the approval of the public art projects. So very simply, the first part of this recommendation is to talk about whether we want to change the program so that instead of it going, the money collected goes just to art, that it goes to art, and it can also go to art facilities. And my position on that is we've got we've got a number of reserves to talk about building buildings and financing them. And I think that the money that we get for public art should go to public art. The second aspect of it is the percentage of the budget that we get from the city on city projects is 1% of our budget. From the applicants, from the development community, we get 0.5%. And should that be equalized in some way by either increasing or decreasing one of those funds? And option 1 calls for a status quo, just leave it alone. And I think one of the main reasons for that was expressed is we've adjusted a number of programs talking about rent and low market rentals and rental properties and various other things that are going to cost the development community money, and so we should just leave well enough alone. At least that's kind of was my thinking at the time. So we'll go to the speakers. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support option 1, which is the status quo for the allocation of voluntary developer public art contributions. With regards to facilities, and as you mentioned, we already have a process for prioritizing, developing, and building facilities, so I don't think we need to set up a separate fund. Public art projects and projects in the community public art program would be threatened if funds from the public art reserve funds are allocated to other uses. And, these programs are well subscribed and are really vital to the community, in my opinion. And then for number 2, the city and private public art contributions, I support option 1, which is the status quo. We have a policy that follows best practices, and as the report highlights, we have a robust program. Other options contemplate doubling the current contribution developers are requested to provide, as well as adding
adding layers to the process, and I can't support that. I'm just wondering, I'd like to make a small amendment, Your Worship, in that in the motion where it says like number 1, that option 1, and number 2, that option 1, if we just insert status quo, I think that just makes it more clear. So it'd be that option 1, the status quo, and then in number 2, that option 1, the status quo.
What would you do? Would you put it in brackets after option 1 in brackets status quo?
Yeah.
To me, that is the essence of what it is. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay, so I'll take it that that's a friendly amendment in both cases.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for outlining it at the start there, Your Worship. That helps to clarify it for the public and for all of us again. So I will be speaking in opposition to both parts, and I'll just clarify where I think things should lie based on some consultation I've had with some artists in the community and some of the feedback I've heard after reaching out. So for part 1, if you refer to our table 233, sorry, page 233, we have 4 options for this, and the one I've now landed at that I'm in most support of. I am also in support of option 1, the status quo, but I think there's a better end result if we go with option 3, which is the status quo plus council approval of developer contribution allocations. And I will thank the staff for including at the very bottom of that table and the impacts. They made the note that yes, there would be some more work as a result of having to bring it to council and have council bear the weight of some of the decisions that are made. And to offset that, there could be a administration fee percent change. So I know at committee that I didn't specify that, but I will be opposed to option 1 because I feel we have a better solution packed in option 3 if we were to explore it further. Next up, looking at that comparison table on our package, page 235, maybe best practices at one time was 0.5% voluntary from the developer, and maybe Surrey's still in that old game, but it looks like everyone else around us who is developing just fine has twice the amount that they're asking developers to contribute. I know that the table doesn't give us all the information. Is there developers deterred by the 1% that they have to pay when they build something in Queensborough, so they build it in Hamilton? I don't know. It's not here, but that speaks something to why we shouldn't stick with the status quo. And finally, the second part of the motion before us, option 1 presents the status quo, but I like the look of option 2, which would help to balance the contribution. Developers, we don't know how much they make in their profit margin. They could be making 300% profit for all we know. It's kept private from us. So I think having them contribute 1%, just like the city contributes 1% of our budget, that's equal. They're the ones selling it off and getting residents and making potentially lots of profit, where the city is in the business of providing services for the city. And art is an incredible service that can only be done with money. And so this was the option to get more of that. So thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Another controversial topic, public art. Lots of opinions on that too. And based on the few conversations I've had about it, while everybody is not happy with various pieces of public art, I do believe that it enhances our city overall, and people have different opinions on it regarding our living spaces, public and private. It reminds me of the flowers on the boulevard conversation. Some people like it and some people don't. I like it. But it does seem apparent from the conversations I've had that the public art policy is working in terms of the amount of money it has in its budget. So on the second part of increasing it from 0.5 to 1%, I don't support that. I support the status quo. And, you know, if you think about it, it's not 0.5%. Well, it is 0.5%, but it's also 100% increase. It's doubling it. And I think that we have to be careful about just doubling various fees when there isn't a demonstrated need for it. Our public art seems to be doing very well. The fund is healthy, and so I don't support increasing the fee. In terms of the first part, I also support the status quo on that. And I'd just like to say that public art seems healthy in Richmond. On Canada Day, I stopped and looked at the mural on McMath for about 5 or 10 minutes, actually. It was amazing. It was really nice. Perhaps not everybody likes it, but I think it was really well done. We just received a memo on the Lee Hansen mural at Mitchell Island, and I thought, wow, what a great improvement on that retaining wall, or the wall at Mitchell. So I think public art is healthy. I don't see the need to change it. The fund is healthy, and I think it's being used in an appropriate way, although it can be controversial. So I support the status quo on both. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you. I will also be supporting both option ones in both situations. I think if we actually want to support public art and artists, we are right to do a better job at the outset, which is what we've already done. We've already changed how we redefine and the scope of the project, and then allow the process to unfold. I think we've got a committee that looks after things. They've got professional artists on that committee. There's people who understand art, and they're working hard to make sure that we have interesting pieces and provocative pieces. If there's no feeling whether people hate it or love it, then a piece of art isn't provocative. It's nothing. I think you need things that create discussion, create argument, create some motivation to have a conversation around it. And I'm really excited about what we've done with our mural program and how public funds have been able to support that. I know we've got a new mural at West Wind Elementary where my kids go to school, and they're really excited when that came in. You know, I've been waiting for my kids to play soccer over at West Richmond Community Center. I've seen that one. We wandered by Thompson a while ago, and they've got a new mural. So I think we're seeing new murals, we're seeing new things come up. And, you know, you may not love every mural that you see in the city, but the fact is there is a mural there, and it is more interesting to look at, and it does make going to that park more enjoyable and something to look at and have an opinion about, and, you know, what it makes you feel and think. And that's what we want. We don't want everything finally to come to council and then a handful of people pressure us to hate it, and then we get rid of it and, you know, upset the artists and, you know, disappoint people, make people think that, you know, their art is worthless. I don't think we want to do that to artists and put them through that process and have them experience that. I think we want to embrace art, look at it, and have the provocativeness of it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call these, the question on these.
Councillor Day would like to speak to you.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Very much, Mayor Brody. I won't be supporting this. I think that status quo is dead. It's time to be more modern and more progressive. And I think that Richmond City Council should have the ability to direct the money in new ways for new groups of artists so that we can have a really vibrant art community. And status quo is old news. And I actually missed, and I thank Councillor Wolf for this, I missed that on page 235, Burnaby, Montreal, New Westminster, Ottawa, Toronto, and West Vancouver all charge 1%. I didn't realize that we were on the cheap side. So now I'm voting against both number 1 and number 2. I think it's time to try something new. I've talked to artists that are dying to have money put into programs and opportunities and projects that they can jump into. So the more authority we can give to City Council, the more ability we can to hear those people and serve that really underserved area need. So I will not be supporting number 1 or number 2 today.
I'll call the question, then I'll divide them up on number 1. All those in favor? Those opposed?
Carol Day, nay.
So I see Councillor Wolf, Councillor Steves, Councillor Day, Councillor Al opposed, so that is carried. And on number 2, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Councillor Day, nay.
It is carried with Councillor Wolf, Councillor Steves, Councillor Day opposed. Brings us to the last item of business. And so we'll turn over item 18 to Councillor McPhail, the chair of the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 18, application by Brian Dagnall for an agricultural land reserve, transportation, utility, and recreational trail use application at 6808 Finn Road. Planning Committee recommendation that authorization for Brian Dagnall to forward an agricultural land reserve, transportation, utility, and recreational trail use application to the Agricultural Land Commission to improve a portion of Finn Road to municipal road standards for 20 meters west of the east side of the property line with no conditions be approved. So moved.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The application is to seek council approval to apply to the Agricultural Land Commission to open and improve a portion of Finn Road that is currently not a constructed municipal road. Should the application be approved by council and the ALC, it would permit building permits for agricultural or residential buildings. At Planning Committee, the owner provided a history of the property and noted that the barn and home were constructed prior to the purchase of the property. Therefore, in his opinion, the land was purchased as a working farm. The property has been a working farm since 1948, and Finn Road was used as the primary access to the property until currently. The no-access parcel was not known until the property was put up for sale, and the property will no longer be sold and will be farmed by the family. I believe that there is photographic and anecdotal evidence so that the application deserves to go to the Agricultural Land Commission for their decision. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments on this item. I did attend the planning meeting and heard the conversations and the delegates who were there. And I thank staff for providing us a memo as a result of some of the conversations that happened there. We received a memo on July 8th about no access parcels in the ALR, of which it refers to 661 parcels in the ALR that are classified as no access parcels like this one. So if you talk about opening a can of worms or a can of something, this might be the one to do it. So I also note that we've done a number of items like this where it's been an application from a landowner. The difference I find with this one is it actually involves a municipal roadway. So it actually puts a little bit more of the city behind the momentum to not farm in those exact spots where there will be a road, there will be parking spaces, there'll be a house, there'll be septic fields, and all the other things that go with all that. So I don't think this is the time for the city to be supporting projects like this, and to go along with this, we just got information in our council inboxes about the province opening up flexibility. So even though we in committee, this was discussed as potentially having one house, as of today, there could be two houses put on that property as a result of the new flexible housing strategy that the province is bringing forward for ALR properties. So I think it's a dangerous precedent that could be set here. So I'll be opposing it. Thanks.
All right.
Councillor Day.
Yes, go ahead.
Councillor, thank you very much. Yeah, I will not be supporting that. If it was just to extend for 20 meters and allows for the construction of a barn, I would be very supportive of this because I want to support farming. But in this case, the so-called house that was on the property was decommissioned in 1970. That's 40 years ago. This is a farming property. It's not a residential property. And once we open this up, we open up every single non-farm use or farm-only use road. And so I can't in good conscience support this. And I understand where the owner's coming from, but honestly, you had 40 years. It's time to make this into a nice new barn, and we could make that amendment, I could support it. But if it's going to allow residential, I cannot support it. So I move that we amend this to only allow a barn structure for farming purposes.
You're making a motion to amend?
Yeah, only allow for a barn, not a residence.
I'll come back to you. Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, first of all, staff, thanks for the follow-up memo that was already mentioned. That was helpful as well. Because one of my questions during planning, or one of my comments was, how much of a precedent is this? How many properties are there? And we had that conversation. And your memo points out that this is, as we discussed before, unique. And matter of fact, it's more unique than I even imagined it would be. Because if I'm reading the memo right, there is no other property that fits this set of circumstances. This is a farm that has been farmed continuously by one family. This is a parcel of land that had a house on it. This is a parcel of land that had a barn on it that blew down just a few years ago. The rules of access have probably changed, I don't know how many times, since 1948 or 1950 or 1970. So now it's a no access parcel of land. We aren't creating anything. We're allowing the owner to possibly recreate a situation that existed before, where his family essentially homesteaded from their point of view. So I will be supporting it. If you go there and look at it, you can see where the barn was, you can see the footings, you can see the power pole where the power came in for the farm. This is not opening up a can of worms, and this is not opening up a debate about every no access parcel of land in the ALR. It's not. Because there is no other situation like this in Richmond. There is no other parcel of land that fits the details and the specifications of what we're talking about tonight. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the motion, and I'm pleased with staff brought forward the report with what I already knew. I mentioned at committee that this was unique. Originally, every farm in Richmond had no paved road. They were on lanes. Even our house at the end of Steveston Highway was on a lane from 7th Avenue to our house, and part of our land outside the dike had a fence across Steveston Highway. So effectively, access of every farm was basically whatever the farmer could do to get there. 7th Avenue, there was Lumpoy's farm, there was Harry Thompson's farm, no gravel even, just a lane. And in the wintertime, it got muddy, and you got stuck trying to get to their farms. This is the last one that never got a paved road into their farm, where a house existed. But originally, none of the farmhouses had paved roads, and it's taken since 1948 to get the pavement into this one, largely because the house burned down or was removed, or whatever it was. I guess it was simply got too old, and the barn blew down. But this is a farm property that was farmed, that had a house, that had a barn like the rest of us, and it's got a gravel road in, but not a paved road. And gravel roads were really, really, really good back only 50 or 60 years ago, because a lot of the farms didn't even have that. So I support it. The other 600 ones were subdivisions that were made around World War II, when they thought vets were going to come back, and they put 2-acre lots with roads through in a plan. So the large areas of Richmond have got these potential subdivisions, and we said, no, we're not putting those in. They've never been subdivided. They've never been broken up into small parcels, and we're not going to break them up today. And so they're protected, and all the other ones that are in road allowances that have never been paved are protected because they were never farmed as single units either. So it is unique.
All right, I'll go back to Councillor Day. You wanted to add an amendment or make an amendment to add the condition that the building be restricted to a barn only. Is that what you're...
Farm uses.
Sorry?
Just farm uses, as like a barn, or maybe they want to put in a greenhouse. I don't know, but farm uses.
Well, a residence would be a farm use, or it could be.
Let's just say barn then.
Okay. All right, so that's your motion to amend. Is it seconded? It's seconded by Councillor Wolf. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? All right, so it'd be Councillor Day, Councillor Wolf in favor, all those opposed. So that is defeated with the two councillors in favor. Now, Councillor McPhail, did you want to wrap up? No, you're muted now. You're unmuted.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have my hand up previously, but it was just to clarify what the memo said, and Councillor Hobbs and Councillor Steve have clarified that this is a unique situation. So no, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, doke. So with that, we will call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf and Day opposed. That brings us to the public announcements and the events. Just a few of them tonight. First of all, we have our fall programs that people should be thinking about. It's really time to start thinking about the fall programs. The fall registration opens Tuesday, July 20th for programs that start in early September. So go to the website and you can find all the programs for people of all ages and abilities. Now, the Friends of the Library just hosted a book sale at the Cambie branch of the library, and they're going to have another one on Saturday, July 24th from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. It's at the Cambie branch of the library, an excellent opportunity to pick up some bargain books while supporting our excellent public libraries. And it really is a really good book sale. Now, with the warm weather upon us, fire prevention becomes more important than ever. Reminder that open flames and burning of any kind is not permitted at any time, anywhere in the city. Only gas or propane barbecues are allowed in city parks and only in designated areas. Weed burning devices are also illegal. They're a safety hazard, so don't use them. And for the smokers, they must dispose of the cigarette butts in a safe receptacle. So for information on fire safety, go to firerescue.richmond.ca. And finally, we encourage everyone to get outside this summer and enjoy many of the wonderful spaces and food Richmond has to offer. Tourism Richmond has placed 31 pop-up picnic tables in 7 locations close to restaurants throughout the city center and Steveston Village for people to grab a bite and enjoy the outdoors. So if you want more information on that, I'm sure you can find it on the Tourism Richmond website or go to visitrichmondbc.com. So Madam Clerk, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption, both with no noted opposition.
So moved. Moved and seconded. Oops. Sorry, I just clicked out. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And for the development permit panel?
Thank you. There are 2 recommendations for council. Recommendation 1, that the chair's report for the development permit panel meeting held on October 28, 2020 be received for information. And recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of the development permit for the property at 8671, 8691, 8711, and 8731 Spires Road be endorsed and the permit so issued.
So moved. So that's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment. Thank you. We're now adjourned.